Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Grit. I am Jason Harwood. With me is Jacob Litton. Jacob, Milo had basketball yesterday. Was it a game or was it just practice?
It was practice, man. It was a stressful day for me. Obviously, we got hit with a bunch of snow. I schedule myself enough time at work where like I can come home, pick Milo up. We get to practice. We're there about 15 minutes early. I'm the head coach, or I'm the only coach, so I got to be on top of stuff. The snow really slowed me down on the way home. I got home around the time we should be walking into the school. So then I get Milo, we go, we're obviously a little bit late for practice. We only had one person not show up, but, it's just, it's third and fourth grade basketball.
Yeah.
And you got to have so much. I have a lot of patience. I have more patience than anybody I know, which is good because I swear, like it's impossible to get them to run a pick play or a give and go or to focus on rebounding. They do all right in practice, but as soon as the games start, they got mom and grandma in the crowd and they're playing against their friends. And it's like, they forget how to bounce pass. They forget not to travel. So, it's funny for basketball because this grade at baseball, they put it together a little bit more for baseball. T-balls when they're like running around, nobody knows what's going on. Baseball, they start putting it together a little more. Basketball, they do not have it together until probably for most kids, till probably fifth or sixth grade, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just chaos.
Yeah. I had a stressful day for me a little bit. Well, I guess it wasn't crazy stressful.
A stressful day. Jason did not have to drive in the snow at all.
I did not, but I did have a job interview. And so I do have a question for you. So I had a job interview. It's remote. So I was doing it. I'm just doing it over like a Zoom call or whatever. My current boss, before I do this interview, she does a Zoom chat with me about 15 minutes before just to see how I'm doing. And she said, all right, I want you to log off. She wanted me to stop working. She goes, I want you to turn on some music as loud as you can and just, get yourself hyped up. So what do you think I played? I bet you can guess the artist, but see if you can guess the song that I played.
All right, so it was Eminem.
It definitely was Eminem.
I think Lose Yourself is too common of one, so I don't know that you would have played that one. Won't Back Down doesn't feel job interviewy. I know you like the Toby song. There's too many Eminem songs. I don't know which one you would find the most uplifting for the job interview.
Okay, I'll give you the album it's from. It's the Eminem Show. So it's way back when.
Well, that was when he was getting the Eminem Show. I only know. No, I can't even think of one from the Eminem Show.
Yeah. What is it? The same song that I would play before a big pharmacy exam. I would play. It's Soldier. I love the beat drop on that. It like gets me focused, and then I'm a soldier. And then I played on YouTube Music, so I played that, and I'm ready, and and that there's no one else in the house, so it's up pretty loud. The next song was Survival, Eminem's Survival, and it was Survival of the Fittest, and I was like, this is a good lead in right to my interview. I'm interviewing against some other good candidates, so felt good going into it. It was a good interview. Even got to mention you in it, like I told you, and I hyped you up. I teased you before that I was going to give you bad word of mouth, but I gave you pretty good props. So
I mean, you can't do that. You try to trash me in the interview, and I think they'd see right through that. They'd be like, "Oh no,
they would. They wouldn't buy it.
It's full of crap. This is
exactly.
We know all about Jacob." So, it's funny that you mentioned the song thing because when you were first talking about it, it reminded me of two things. The Office, if you remember, like Jim and Dwight go on a sales call, and Dwight's like, "Leave the keys," and he was like, "Do you still do that?" And he's got the rock music playing in the car before they go on the sales call. The other one is The Other Guys, the Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, when they're on their way to the scene. And he was like, just need a little music to pump me up. And it's a Little River Band. He yells America and just floors it right into the crime scene.
Oh, man.
That's what I thought of when you were mentioning that.
Yep. No, I knew
you'd glad to hear it went well.
Yeah, it did. It did. We'll find out for a week and a half or whatever. But it was good. So, all right, man, let's move on to some Lions topics here. So a topic that you and I wanted to bring up when we recorded Monday night, right? So, and then we talked about the OC, we talked about Pro Bowl, and we ended up talking too long. We didn't want to rush this topic, so we saved it for here. And then what happened Tuesday morning, right? Well, we looked down there, and our buddy Jeremy Reisman, wrote a whole article on it. I did not read the article. Did you
didn't
read
either.
his article?
No. I saw that he posted it. I was like, that guy beat us to the punch again. But I did not want to read the article. I didn't want to know.
Yeah, I didn't want to read the article to influence what I would be talking about here. I will read the article after we've done this podcast, and we'll see. But I'm glad that we mentioned it on the podcast that we were going to do this before. Maybe Jeremy's listening, and he's like, "Screw this, we got to get this out of here."
Yeah.
He's got moles. Maybe Morgan told him. Someone speaking, man. Or
someone inside Friday Detroit.
Exactly. They got moles all over the place.
Well, now we can't tease anything now because they'll just next day article right away.
If anyone doesn't know we're being sarcastic, obviously those good guys over there, Jeremy just, had the same mindset that we had, right? Like the trade. The reason why I want to talk about it, okay? Everyone's so upset, even in the Brad Holmes conference call, they're bringing up trade markets. Like, should you have made a trade, whatever. And people are really fixated on this. And what really makes me upset is the fact that a trade didn't happen, obviously. And they take it as like Brad Holmes didn't try. Like the perception is you just didn't do enough. And he kind of alluded to that one of his answers. He's like, well, it doesn't mean that we didn't try, but just because we failed on, to consummate a trade with our target, does that mean we go with, someone lesser and just make a trade and give up, picks for a guy that, is not going to make it, we don't think is going to make an impact on this team. And that's the way I, approach it. We've compiled every trade that's happened, and all the way up to the Micah Parsons trade. So Micah Parsons trade and after in the season, when we looked at the trades before that, those were all like, before season, and a lot of those are training camp trades with guys that are potentially going to be cut. So I don't really look at those as like, hey, trades, we're going to try to improve the roster. It's like we're trying, just doing roster manipulation at that point. But obviously the Micah Parsons trade, they're trying to improve right now. And depend, regardless of what Jerry Jones is saying about trying to improve right now, he wasn't, because you're losing one of the best defenders in the league. And, maybe I'll help him out later on. But, obviously we'll talk about the results. Like, if you did make it a trade, make a difference in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And I think it'll come to a pretty easy conclusion after we go all this. But do you have anything to say about the Lions' lack of trade? The Brad Holmes, the perception out there. I mean, I don't know your exact views on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like people, it's just such an easy thing to latch onto, especially when you have the Packers making the trade that they did, right? Mm-hmm. And then everyone, like you said, the perception is like, well, we didn't try. Like you said, we were just going to stand pat. We were good with what we had. We weren't trying to upgrade the team, especially in this, last year, it was kind of the whole thing when we got Zadarius Smith, where it was like we were on the trajectory where we were going to be making some noise. This year, it kind of felt like one of those things like, man, we don't look as good as we did last year. It's going to be a dogfight in the NFC North. And people wanted to, they wanted to move. That's also the same as free agency, though. It's just exciting, right? It's just flashy. That's awesome to make a trade there at the deadline. You got a new player. You're like, okay, we've got a new guy coming in. Chances are it's somebody pretty good, or, it's good, reputation, good history. And that makes you feel good about the rest of the season, the second half of the season. Same as when you sign these these huge free agents, most people don't think about like the money and the long-term stuff. They just see the name and they're like, I'm sure when the Packers got Micah Parsons, they're like, oh my God, it's over with for everybody. We got Micah. And obviously they had to pay him a lot of money, and now they've got a lot of their cap space is tied up with two players. They don't think about that. They got Micah Parsons. They are now at home as well. It's not a guarantee that any of that's going to happen. I don't, there's times where I think it would be cool, like at the trade deadline, just like everybody else. If we were to, let's say we traded for Trey Hendrickson and we got some sort of steal and we gave them a 3rd round pick and, a deep role player and got Trey Hendrickson. Yeah, that's exciting. That's awesome. We've got somebody that can help us out. That's not realistic. And they could have called on Trey Hendrickson, and the Bengals could have asked for 3 first-round picks and Brian Branch or something ridiculous. These things are behind the scenes for a reason. So it's just flashy and it's exciting. And I get why people want to do that. It's just, and when these trades happen, there's where the clickbait things come. There's where all the articles, all the YouTube and, TikTok videos and everything about these trades, just because it's something fun to talk about. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's helping the team long term. And often with football, it doesn't help short term. It's not the same as, baseball and basketball where you can take a guy that's not been around the team. Basketball, you've got somebody. Basketball is basketball. Yes, you run plays, you run things a little bit differently, but you can throw somebody on a basketball team and you can find some chemistry and find a way to mesh. He's going to put the ball in the hoop. He's going to do what he does. You can't do that in football. You cannot just take any, wide receiver and put him on any team. That's probably the worst position for me to use that example with. But, you for the most part, you can't do that. Football is way more in-depth than these other sports.
Yep. Ultimate team game. I mean, that's what football is. Ultimate team game. Dan Campbell talked about it. One guy doesn't do his job, and it's whether the play is a success or not. So you're talking about, when you're talking about baseball, it's one guy at the plate, right? And he's, there isn't, I mean, I could say there's chemistry between second baseman, shortstop, some of your infielders on the defensive side, but you could develop that fairly quickly. At least in my experience, you could, obviously, we have the best example, Trammell and Whitaker in this town of just ultimate chemistry. But for, as far as hitting and stuff like that, no, there's not that much there. So it is very hard to make a trade like that's, getting the Micah Parsons trade done early in the season, that way, he has time to develop and you're hoping by, a few games in that he's got that down. Now, I think an edge is able to, acclimate more than the position that you picked, wide receiver. That's probably really the toughest because then not only do you have to figure out the route concepts, but you also have to develop good chemistry with the quarterback, and especially if it's like a timing system. I mean, that's got to be really tough.
Yeah, I mean, most positions I would say there's going to be things where it's not easy just to slide from one team to the other and be able to have an instant impact or play at the level you were playing at before.
We already kind of talked about why everybody latches onto it. It's just fun. It's huge. Now there's certain content creators that just want to create controversy and stuff like that. So that's a big thing of why it's a talking point. We got to have a way to get those clicks. And I was nice that Brad Holmes didn't do the attacking because he was a lot more. It seemed I'd say humble is probably the word. He was definitely much more reserved as far as like coming out and attacking people about, his decisions he made this year, which is probably a good choice because we didn't make the playoffs.
Exactly. You don't have as much ground to stand on to say, look at me, look what I did when you did not make the playoffs.
Exactly. So I want you to, looking back, solely from the perspective of how the season played out, would you have done anything different at the trade deadline? Like you specifically, would you have done anything?
I mean, if there was an offensive lineman, like a decent offensive lineman out there that we could have thrown some sort of mid-round pick flyer, I may have done that because the offensive line was struggling. With that being said, you also know that I feel it's important that the offensive line is a unit and plays with each other and plays off each other and works well with each other. So I don't think anything at the trade deadline would have made a difference for how the season was going. Would it have helped having another lineman? Maybe. I mean, yes, it would have helped a little bit. Who's to say that would have played out? I think before the season, maybe, we should have looked a little bit deeper at the offensive line or what we had or tried to make things work. But that's all, hindsight. When the season started, we saw, Ratledge. We knew that Mahogany was going to be on the other side. We can count on Panay. We weren't sure to the extent of Decker's injury history. I think Graham was the only one that was kind of a question mark. And at the same time, it was like, of all the guys on the team, that's who we trusted most at center. It just didn't work out.
Yep. Yeah. So just as a reminder, the trade deadline's week 9. So it is right after the Minnesota loss. So it has been the Tuesday after the Minnesota loss. That's when you would have had to make a decision. So you can't decide about doing anything. You think at that point, you're thinking the team's thinking Kirby's coming back at some point. At that time, Branch hasn't had his injury. Like safety's off the table. You're probably not looking at safety help. Now, Branch gets hurt earlier, maybe that might happen. And I think that really, you know, when Branch went down, our defense really went down. The run defense went kaput. Like it wasn't great all season, but it really just bottomed out, especially the outside runs, the end arounds that they were doing, the jet sweeps. We were just really susceptible to that. And I just, you know, but it wouldn't have mattered. The trade deadline wouldn't have helped that because we didn't know at that time that Branch was going to go down and that Kirby was going down, and Harper was playing well. And then Harper had the concussions. I mean, we were going to our fifth safety. It was just, not great.
I mean, the defense was unraveling the whole time, even with Branch, but that was the absolute nail in the coffin where it was like, man, and we kind of knew we had our work cut out. Next game was against the Rams, and it's like, man, now we don't have either of our starting safeties. Plus, Terrion is out. That was the point of the season. Felt like it was really, really on the fritz there.
Yep. Got some people in the chat here. Real quick, Brian brings up from Passing Time, our friends over at Passing Time. He's going to be on in a couple weeks, so he wanted to, he's thinking about the roller coaster of Frank. That was Thanksgiving, because that was like right before the Thanksgiving Day game, so that was actually week 13. I don't even think they knew anything about Frank towards the trade deadline, so that I don't think that played anything into it. But it was, I'd love to get Frank back. Brian loves Frank too. He's always thinking about Frank. And let's see, he was clamoring for Jalen Phillips, and AI his output output after the trade was minimal. And AS Eagles says, do you think Brad and Dan get extended at this point right now? That's a good question.
At this point right now, I mean, based on what they've done, based on what they've done already, I would not hate that. I think that they're well on their way to extensions. But getting an extension right now after the season that we've had and the kind of, weird rockiness, the timing of that would be really weird, right?
Yeah. I don't think the perception would go over too well for a lot of people. So I fully want them here for a while. So, I mean, whatever that extension happens, I'm going to support it.
Right.
Dan has done nothing but is he a perfect coach? No, but he's the best coach that I've ever had at Lions, and I just trust him to keep building this program. I'm also not the expectation that we're going to get to the NFC Championship every year. It's just it's very hard to do. The last couple of years we've had injuries, and now hopefully we don't have like monumental injuries like that every season. And if it doesn't, then it plays out. We're totally in the playoffs this year. We don't have both our safeties go down.
I think, yeah. I mean, the amount of injuries into some massive players, like if we had Hutch last year too, I
know,
there's always going to be like what could have been. Mm-hmm. This year, you got Kirby and Branch. Last year, the whole defensive line, the whole team felt like, and we still were rolling into the playoffs. So, yeah, just need to stay healthy. That's like a number one. That's such a huge, important thing, and unfortunately, it's not anything you can control.
As Eagle says, we need to nail this OC hire, and I agree with that. Like,
yes,
if he doesn't 2 years in a row, that would be a bad look. So we got to hit this. Got to hit this hard. So hopefully, with Harbaugh being high, well, I mean, he hasn't signed the contract, but it sounds like he's going to the Giants. That's the first domino, and then now I think some of the other head coaches will fall into place, and then we'll see if the report was that Mike McDaniel would rather have a really good OC job than a head coach at like say the Browns or something like that. A program that's struggling. And you could definitely see him like, well, if he's not happy with any of the job openings this year, just taking the OC job and, jumping back into the market the following year. So whether the Lions, want to have continuity, that's the, that's,
right.
You got to think about that.
But if he has the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator for the Lions or Eagles, wouldn't you take that over trying to be the head coach of the Browns? I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, depends on what you want. I mean, if he really wants to be a head coach, then he's going to have to go to one of those open spots. But you and I both know that there may not be 9 open spots next year, but there will be open spots next year. And if Mike McDaniel comes in and lights up our offense lights up, he's going to be able to decide where he wants to go, of the openings. All right. Before we get into the trades that happened in the season, there was a trade right before the Micah trade, and the only reason we're bringing this up is because the Lions. They traded Tim Patrick, got a 6th-round pick in return. First of all, when you look at that trade, are you okay with the way, Tesla took a little bit to develop? Are you okay with them deciding what they, trading Tim Patrick at that point? Do you think that would have helped at any point during this season?
No, I think having Tim Patrick around, we would have saw even less of Tesla. Maybe they would have really treated this like a red shirt season. We wouldn't have had any of those highlight reel catches. Maybe still have one or two, but I'm still okay with it. It's interesting, Tim Patrick goes to Jacksonville and he ends up having, similar stats to what Tesla did here.
Yep.
I think he played way more snaps in Jacksonville and he played more snaps for us than Tesla did, but 16 games he had this year, 15 catches for 3 touchdowns. And then Tesla played in 17 games for us, 16 catches, so one more catch, but 6 touchdowns. So he had 3 more touchdowns than Tim Patrick. For reference, though, last season for us, Tim Patrick had 33 catches and 3 touchdowns. So, I'll bring it up again. We wanted someone to fill like the Josh Reynolds role and be like that big red zone, big third down target. And that just never materialized for Tim Patrick when he was here. And that wasn't the case for Tesla this year either. Instead, it was, feeding the ball to Amon-Ra and J-Mo more, which, I'm completely okay with. It turned out okay.
Yeah, and also, Tim Patrick, if you remember way back to training camp, was not having a good camp. He was with the second and third team a lot of the season, and it got brought up. So from that aspect, getting anything in return, even though it's a 6th-round pick, you're hoping either Mahogany's a 6th-round pick, right? I mean, those aren't necessarily throwaway picks. And then also you could couple that with a 6th and a 5th to move up to a 4th. There's someone that you want. I mean, getting more picks is a good thing. Just gives you more ammo to make more, to make some moves or add, more people to your roster. We are going to have quite a few roster spots available this year. They've talked about bringing in a lot more competition, so having more picks is, it's a good thing. We'll see how the roster lines up before the draft, but there's going to be some opportunities to make this team from the draft. And then your next question that you wrote, which I think is a fair question too. If we had kept Tim, would that have impacted Tesla's growth this year? Like, because then he's further down and he's not getting any of the playing time. He probably isn't catching that touchdown in week 1. Tim Patrick's probably out there robbing us of one of the greatest, first touchdown catches ever in a Lions uniform. So what do you think?
I want to hear I wrote the question. I want to hear what you have to say about this one first. What do you think?
I think that is like your major argument of why the trade is good, because you get similar production, right? And then Tim Patrick wasn't going to be on this team the next year. Let's get Tesla up to speed. And by all accounts, Dan Campbell, snap counts went way up. I know Khalif got hurt at one point and that affected, Tesla had more snaps, but his snap count as through the season went up. And then also Goff was looking his way more often, like especially those last like 3 to 4 weeks. He was getting his targets were up, and it wasn't just in the red zone either. It was, we're just going to get him the ball. And I think for him to develop chemistry with Goff is really important, especially leading into next year. And you're hoping, I want to see Tesla get the Josh Reynolds route where they just cut to the middle of the back of the end zone. He throws it up high and Tesla just jumps up and catches it. He's got the hands. We need that back because Tim Patrick I think he had like one of those catches, but Josh Reynolds would always have that line up in the slot or outside, and then he'd make one cut and then cut to the back of the end zone, and Goff would hit him in stride every time. So I want him to develop that because he's got the frame to be able to box out people. He can jump up. He's got the hands. We know that. So I want to see that.
I think that's the kind of play they were trying to do when he dropped the ball against the Vikings. Wasn't the Vikings where he jumped and dropped it in the end zone like that? Wasn't a great throw or a great route. The timing was off, but I mean, it was that kind of play that you're talking about. Ideally, that's how that one goes.
Yep. All right. So obviously the first trade, let's look back at the Micah trade. All right. So was that successful for the Packers? Are you giving up now that we've played one season, you saw how he did. reminder that they gave up Kenny Clark and they gave up 2 first rounders. So now you don't have first round picks for the next 2 years. And then now let's add in the injury because that's real. That happened. I mean, he tore his ACL. So like that's a risk of anytime you make a move like that, doesn't mean that player's going to come in and light it up. So you gotta include that, Jacob. So what do you think? Like after the end of the end of the season, looking back on it, was that if that happened to Lions and they gave up 2 first round picks, would that have been worth it for you?
If we had the exact same result, you mean like not in their terms? You're talking about like if the Lions made this trade?
You could go. I don't know how you just clarify how you want to answer it. If
So
you want to answer it in the Packers terms, or if you want to talk about in the Lions.
Yeah, because
terms.
I can't put the Lions. That's not a trade that we would have made, and that's not the kind of thing. I can't envision that happening. Like that would be us trading Aleem, McNeil, and 2 first-round picks, I guess, for Micah, which would have been one of those things, flashy, all the articles about it, all the noise about it. And, Micah played in 14 games, 12 and a half sacks, first team All-Pro. He had a great year, tears his ACL at the end of the year, which is just brutal. But it's one of those things that time's going to tell. Like if this was just the end of it right now, you're like, did the Packers win this trade? I can't say that they won the trade, but I think they're okay with it right now, right? You're living with it. You're like, you know what? We made the playoffs. He made the defense better. He made all pro. We had a really good team. They had an okay team. I can't call the Packers really good. But I just think this is one of those things when you revisit this thing in 3 or 4 years and you see the cap hits and you see that you've lost these first round picks and you don't have like a younger talent to build around them. I still feel like this is going to not look good years down the road, in my opinion. But right now, it's still fresh. After the first year, I would still say that the Packers are on the positive side of it.
Yeah, I mean, the picks haven't been made yet. And so while I'm talking, why don't you look up where the Green Bay Packers were going to pick in the first round? It's probably in the 20s, early 20s, I would say, but I'm not sure. I'm curious about that. But the injury really just, man, because not only, they lost all those games at the end of the year. So that really hurt. Like they lost the last 5 games in a row at the end of the year. I think that was with that injury happened. When did that happen? It was in the Broncos game.
It was week 15 is when Micah went down.
Micah went down in week 15. So yeah, so they lost.
They did not win a game after he went down.
16, 17, 18. So and then they lost the game previous to that. So they had lost 5 games in a row. But what I'm worried about is ACL injury for an edge player. He even when he comes back next year, he's not going to be the same player. We saw, not that Aleem is edge or whatever. Well, I guess we did have him playing edge this year, but Aleem didn't have the explosion that he had, in his career previously, getting off the line. So, this could affect Micah all of next year. And then you're talking about losing 3 games this year and a lot of next year. That's going to be tough to make up with, especially when you're talking about the contract going up and losing losing first round picks. Where are they picking next year?
20.
I mean, they're going to be top 5 the next year. Cowboys will get that top 5 pick.
Yeah.
No,
that'll be a huge storyline, right?
That's my huge wish, right? I guess it doesn't matter. They're not going to lose their picks, but I'd love to see them lose a bunch of games. And then Floor gets fired. Man, this is a fantasy for me right now. Brian says, "Can you imagine Micah with Hutch?" And I do like that thought, but I'm agree with Jacob. We'd have to give. You're not re-signing Gibbs. Jack Campbell might be out. Laporta, like.
How do you sign any of them if you don't have any room? Like.
Yeah.
Lucky for them, they don't have to worry about paying receivers, or they don't have any worth paying. That's why their first round pick from last year only got 300 yards and no touchdowns. So they're like, we can't make good first round picks anyway. So we'll just.
Well, if you talk to a lot of Packer fans, they have like 5 number 1 receivers: Dobbs, Watson, Jaden Reed. I know Reed's, I think, on a free agent this year, but yeah. Golden was definitely a disappointment for them this year. I mean, they thought he was going to get a lot more production.
And all the noise from being the first wide receiver that they drafted in the first round, and maybe they just put too much pressure on him. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers will come back next year, and they He'd be the backup for Jordan Love, and then he could teach his wide receivers how to play because that's what's missing, right? Aaron
Right.
Rodgers' expertise.
Something else,
All
another
right.
comment that we have in there real quick. Said
Yeah.
the argument against it is the 49ers this year because the 49ers have the injuries and they're in the playoffs. But I do want to point out that we had more injuries than the 49ers do. We had more last year, and we still went rolling into the playoffs. Obviously, we were the 1 seed, so we didn't play in the wild card like how the 49ers did. But I also want, like, the 49ers were dead last in their division last year, right? So they had like the benefit, like we will next year, of having a somewhat easier, schedule. Obviously, the NFC West was really hard too, but there's a lot of other things that go into play there. And did you also see that Fred Warner is, I think, like started his window, or he's like about to come back?
Yeah, I saw some videos of him running and stuff.
Yeah,
He's
I
not
seen
come
him.
back this week. They
I
opened
seen him
up the
doing
practice
kicks.
window.
He was doing these kicks on this heavy bag and flips. It looked like a Power Ranger.
Red Ranger, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I started to think like right about now would have been when we were opening up Hutch's practice window. Like after this week, the talk about if he could come back from his injury, because that's what they're probably
Hutch's
hoping.
his video was a lot less impressive than Fred Warner's.
Yes, Hutch's video was a running straight, and he had a big hitch in his get up when he in that video around this time. Warner is like doing superhero stuff. Yeah, do you like that?
Okay.
All right, let's move on to some of these other trades. So, Flacco goes from Cleveland over to Cincinnati, and fun story there. Helped Jamar Chase finally get the ball over there. They realize, hey, we just need a guy that can just throw it to Jamar Chase and not get intercepted. Flacco did that. The results weren't great, 1-5. Other big trade that let's talk about this is Jalen Phillips goes to the Eagles. Eagles give up a 3rd-round pick to get Jalen Phillips. The first game he comes in, he has a sack. Everyone's talking like Howie Roseman did it again. He is the master at this. And it didn't turn out as well. Like after that week, he had like another half sack or 1 sack the rest of the whole rest of the season. Yeah. 74 overall grade on PFF. I think you asked an interesting question. We didn't have a 3rd-round pick to give up, at least not in this next draft. But would you have given up like a 4th and a 5th for Jalen Phillips? Would that have been worth it for you? Do you think?
I think if you asked me in the middle of the season, 4th and a 5th for Jalen Phillips, I would have said, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what we can get. But obviously, now we have this hindsight, and he was a part of the Eagles' defensive line, and they've got a lot of good players on that defense, and that culminated in 2 sacks for him and 28 tackles, over the course of the rest of the year. And he wasn't really that much of an impact player. And that's a short-term fix that they tried to get. It worked out somewhat for them. They made the playoffs and everything. They won their division, but I don't think that would have made a difference. If we got the same level of play out of him in Detroit, I don't think it would have made a difference in the season.
No, people would have talked about it, been happy to have,
Za'Darius.
to have that. Yeah, exactly. Well, Za'Darius was way more productive during his time with Lions. So,
right.
Yes, he would have been opposite of Hutch. He would have had the opportunity to get there. But is it worth it to just make the playoffs? Like, if we just made the playoffs, then we gave up, we're talking about 4th and 5th round because we don't have a 3rd round. Then we're looking at this next draft going, man, we really don't have any assets to move anything around here. So at that point you got to wonder, like, how much is that all worth it?
Hindsight, revisit and everything, but
Yeah. Well, that's what this is about. I want to see, like, these trades that happened, right? What did it result in? It resulted, we don't know if it resulted in the playoffs, but, cumulatively, I want to look at all these trades and be like, people are griping at Holmes for not making a move. What are the results of all these trades? Are people getting further in the playoffs because of this? And I think at the end of the day, you're going to see, like, it's really not that productive to make a trade. The next trade that we're going to talk about is Jacoby Myers goes from the Raiders to Jacksonville. He ends up having 42 catches and 3 touchdowns. He's actually pretty good trade for Jacksonville to get some more production there. Now, again, they made the playoffs, get bounced in the 1st round.
And I don't know if Jacoby did he even have a catch in that game.
I don't think so. Christian Kirk had a heck of a game, you know, and then I think
Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, the Texans?
Yeah. No, isn't Kirk on? No, was that
You're talking about Brian Thomas or Parker Washington?
Yes, Parker Washington's what I'm thinking. I'm getting the two mixed up.
Right.
Parker Washington had a heck of a game that game.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And he kind of came out of nowhere.
Yes. So that trade, now the next one, the Colts. You know, the Colts,
this
at the
was
time
a big
of making
one.
this, they were thinking they're making a playoff push, right? They're like, this is going to happen for us. So they end up giving up 2 first-round picks, the wide receiver for, Sauce Gardner.
Do you remember that receiver, right?
Huh?
Adonai Mitchell, you remember that? He was the one that dropped the ball when the Jets lost, or when the Colts lost.
So I like the stats you wrote up here for a thing. So tell everybody.
It's noteworthy. It's noteworthy. So
it is. It's funny.
Sauce Gardner went 0-7 when he played for the New York Jets. He gets traded to the Colts. I want to say the Colts were like 7-1 at the time or whatever. He gets traded to the Colts. He won his first game in overtime at home for the Colts against the Falcons. I think he got hurt, but it was like a minor injury in that game. But he was battling injuries the whole time. The Colts finished up. So he went 0-7 on the Jets. He won that first game, 0-7 on the Colts.
Yeah. 110.
The Colts finished the season 0-7. He didn't play in all those games, but he played in 11 games this year. He went 1-10.
Yeah.
He got to win that one game in overtime, which is terrible. And it's not Sauce's fault. I'm not putting that on him. But just while we're talking about the trade, like, the Colts just gave up a lot. They thought, hey, we're 7-1. We're poised to make a Super Bowl run. We're going to make some noise right now. We're going to trade 2 first-round picks, and then, not unlike the Micah thing, injuries happen. This Colts season, that was more Daniel Jones. They had Phillip Rivers. Like, there's more to that. But bottom line here, this is another trade that just right now did not work out for them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, other things besides even the player that you trade for could derail. Your quarterback gets hurt. Your backup gets hurt. And then all of a sudden you're getting a 44-year-old quarterback that was about to enter the Hall of Fame and now reset his clock for 5 more years. There's just so much in football that can happen. And I'm not saying you don't take risk. I'm not saying that. But you have to have perspective when you're wanting your team to go all in. It doesn't mean that you're going to guarantee success. It just doesn't. So you look at that. I mean, you end up with a number one, and they'll have Sauce, for, the coming future, but they also, they have to pay Sauce, his big contract, and they do this without first round picks. So, I mean, that's the risk that you make. You're getting an impact player, but we also see they get injured too. Right. And so, man, it's crazy.
That's a lot of the conversation that we keep having and that people keep having about the Lions, right? Because we're talking about the window, right? The Super Bowl window. We want it to be as open as long as possible, and we want to be able to make the playoffs and try to make some noise. People sell out. You can enter the lottery, 5 times, or you can enter it 1 time and have a better chance. People are just selling for that one chance, that one shot at winning the championship. And if you're the Colts, you've set yourself back now. I mean, you lost those first-round picks. Yes, the offensive line played good. Daniel Jones played well enough. The defense was playing okay, but I mean, the first round picks are gone. The cap space is going to be gone now.
And you don't have a quarterback because the first round pick that you pick, Anthony Richardson, has shown that he's not the guy. Daniel Jones, I think, if you give me right, he only signed the 1 year. It was a 1-year deal. So they're going to have to either pay him, and he's going to look for a raise because of the way he played before he got injured.
Right.
So it's crazy. Next trade I want to talk about, this team's still in the playoffs right now. So the Seahawks acquired Rashid Shaheed from the Saints, gave up a 4th and a 5th round pick. I was actually like that when that trade happened. I was like, that makes sense because JSN was, lighting it up, but you knew that teams were going to just start trying to take him away, and you need to have someone on the other side that could spread the field. Now, the interesting thing about it is not really in the receiving game that he made the huge difference. It's special teams, right? How you got some nice stats there. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, so Rashid Shaheed played 9 games for Seattle currently, not including the playoff game. He's got 15 catches as a Seahawk. He has yet to catch a touchdown, but he had a kickoff return touchdown and a punt return touchdown, and both of those happened in huge moments and big games for comeback wins against the Falcons and then against the Rams. He had the punt return against the Rams that kind of triggered that, which resulted in the Seahawks getting the 1 seed and everything like that. So I mean, that's an impact player. I think if you're a Seahawks fan, you only gave up a 4th and a 5th rounder, and then you got an impact guy. And it's not that he is a downfield threat. It's kind of like having, how we use JMO, that so whoever's on him has to worry about him going deep. You take away that part of the field, they still have Cooper Kupp as well for underneath stuff. So just having him out there and having a decoy, I'm sure helps out a little bit. And if they do catch somebody sleeping on him, which might happen in the playoffs, might happen this week, Rashid Shaheed can score a 60, 70-yard touchdown bomb over the top.
Yep.
So I'm with you. As soon as that happened, I said that makes sense. That works out. The Seahawks are trying to make a run. Low risk with a 4th and a 5th round pick. I don't think that they're too concerned about that. And that's Rashid Shaheed is not going to be somebody that's, that you're going to have to worry about moving cap space around to fit in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's got the wild card of the special teams making a difference. And I mean, you talked about those comeback in the playoffs. Man, if he had a return or a huge return set him up, I mean, it could really make a big difference. So far that's the trade that, obviously the Micah one had an impact, but this one's had a pretty big impact. Getting 2 games, which, for the number 1 seed means if they don't win those 2 games, I'm not saying that play alone won those games, but, contributed to it. If he doesn't, then the Rams are probably the number 1 seed and you're not getting the first round bye. So that, in that case, that's your argument for a trade of this season's. Like, you give up the 4th and 5th round pick and it made an impact. It got you a win or 2. Next trade that I want to talk about is the Quinnen Williams trade. Dallas's, second huge trade of this season. Gave up a 1st and a 2nd round pick and Mozzie Smith, former Wolverine, get Quinnen Williams. This one I shook. The Cowboys were like trying to make their push towards the playoffs when they made this trade. It did make their defense noticeably better after that point. I still scratch my head a little bit of like coupling this with the Micah trade, like why this went on. But how do you view this trade now, Jacob?
I think the Cowboys are okay with it. I mean, obviously Cowboys fans and everything, you didn't want to lose Micah. They wanted to pay Micah. They did lose him. And then Jerry Jones had to answer questions about that for 2 months before he finally was like, okay, fine, we're going to make this move. And it actually ended up being a good move for them. Mozzie Smith was their 1st round pick, but he was not working out, for whatever reason, just never really turned out the way they thought it was going to be. They had that 1st round pick to give, that they got from Green Bay. So they still had a 1st rounder. They gave a 2nd round pick, and they get Quinnen Williams, who's one of the best defensive tackles in the game. So he played in 7 games in Dallas. The defense, like you said, the defense was definitely better, just not enough to win the division. But now that's somebody that they're going to have, on their roster for at least the next few years, somebody that you can try to build around, and you've still got high draft picks. So
yep.
I would say that if I'm judging or grading this trade, I still think Dallas came out on top. I don't think they're missing anything that they lost there.
Yeah, I think that it's, we'll have them next year. The cap hit's like 20.7 million. So that's the percentage of the cap as of right now, it's like 7% of the cap. I mean, that's pretty sizable for defensive tackle, but you're talking about the PFF ranked number 2 defensive tackle in the league. So it's, you're getting production from him. It's pretty stout with Kenny Clark right next to him. Down the middle, you're expecting to shut down the run game. I mean, they're gonna need edge help though. And sacks get paid. They still, in this deal, like if you couple this with the Micah one, they gave up the better player. Micah's the better player in my opinion on that. He's the one that impacts the game more than Quinnen Williams, especially on the stat sheet. Now, I mean, someone that's watching game film, they could have arguments about the defensive tackle, maybe having more, but I think Micah affects your game planning way more than Quinnen Williams.
With that being said, sorry, not to cut you off. Finish.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the Cowboys were in a position where they had drafted Ezraku, the rookie edge, who was showing flashes already, and they had Jadeveon Clowney. And people at the time were like, oh, he was almost an afterthought, but Clowney had a really good year. I mean, he was really impactful, which hurts as a team that needed an edge defender to see that and be like, man, we could have got Clowney and he would have done all right.
Yep. The Clowney thing is interesting. At some point I was going to revisit that, like with the Lions. Like, would that have been a guy that would have made a big difference? I think it's still up for debate about this trade in itself. We got the first rounder that the Jets are getting is not even in this next draft. It's the following draft. It's the 2027 draft. It's the higher. They must have multiple. Probably because they have the Packers pick. It's
Exactly.
like the higher one. They get the higher one from
Right.
that. So whoever.
So the Packers do have a top 5 pick.
Yeah, actually, it'll go to the Jets. That's hilarious. They could pick another top 5 quarterback and suck it up. But anyways, think that real quick before So let's go back and look. So the Bears did make one trade. It wasn't a big trade. Not going to worry about that. Seahawks made the Rashid Shaheed trade. They're in the divisional round. Pats made 3 trades this year, but they were all for draft picks. They weren't acquiring any players. They acquired draft picks. Still won their division. I mean, that's the best of both worlds, right? You're acquiring assets and you made 3 trades. Panthers did make a trade. They acquired Keon White, and then the Rams acquired a cornerback, Roger McCreary. They're all in division round. The Texans did make one trade, but it was the acquired draft picks. That was they traded their offensive lineman, and the name's escaping me right now. But so those are all the teams that made trade that are in the divisional round. Chargers made 3 trades. Trevor Penning is, no one but Odafe Owe. Had a pretty good season, ranked 21 in PFF, so that was a good trade. But they lost assets, and they lost in the wild card round. The Jags made 3 trades this year. I say Jacoby Myers is a success, but they traded Greg Newsome, and Greg Newsome did not have a good year. And that was someone that we were thinking about, like when DJ Reed went down, we didn't know how long he was going to be. Like,
right.
Newsome was someone that we had talked about, trying to acquire. Who knows? He might have had different impact with us. We needed that secondary help, but maybe it would have been better. Eagles made 4 trades, but I would say, Jalen Phillips, 3rd round pick, probably, especially the way the Eagles draft, they probably would have been better off keeping that pick. Jair Alexander didn't even, he show up for a week and then he retired or, decided to step away from football. Michael Carter II didn't really produce enough for them to even get a PFF grade. And then Tank Bigsby was another person that they acquired. Had some pretty good runs in the last week, but again, not an impact player for the season. Steelers did make a trade. They got Kyle Duggar, lost in the first round. And then obviously the Packers, Micah Parsons, lost in the first round. Most of the teams that didn't make, Jets made 5 trades this year. Saints made 3. Cowboys made 3. Browns made 4, all no playoffs. Colts, Raiders, Bengals, Ravens, Titans, and Dolphins. All those teams made trades, didn't make the playoffs. And that's, again, for the Micah Parsons trade over. So really, if I'm looking at, any trade that made an impact for the playoffs this year, Micah Parsons, I would say yes, because I don't know if the Packers are making the playoffs if they don't make that Micah Parsons trade, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is hilarious because after week 1, they were like, we're winning the Super Bowl. There's no one that could beat us. And then they destroyed the Commanders in week 2, and it just looked like they were going to just be on fire. And then, they just didn't, it just didn't work out for them. So, but it's funny that Micah Parsons trade doesn't happen. I don't think they get there. And then you wonder if Jeff Hafley's getting interviews with head coaches if Micah Parsons.
That's what I was just going to say. Is there's another element to this, and that's if he becomes a head coach somewhere.
I know. Yep. And so that's hilarious. But I think you and I talked about the Rashid Shaheed trade did impact, probably out of all these, probably impacted the playoff race the most, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, let's say one of these teams that we have listed on here, wins the Super Bowl. I don't think that you'll be able to look back and say like it was because of that trade that they made.
No.
Now, let's say the Seahawks go to the Super Bowl and Rashid Shaheed catches an 80-yard touchdown and a 90-yard kickoff return. Then maybe you can start talking about how that. But, just looking at these, most of these were not impactful players or impactful trades, really.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Just like if the Lions have made a trade, it's most likely going to be on these one of the trades of like, yeah, it's on there. They made it, but we gave up assets and it ultimately didn't mean anything. Now, we were so close to making the playoffs that even like a small incremental change might have got us in the playoffs. And who knows what would have happened on that. It's just a matter of what assets we were to give up to get a player. But to get someone meaningful, you're going to have to give up some assets. The problem is we didn't have a third round pick to trade, and I don't want to be trading our first or second round picks.
Exactly right. We can't afford that.
Yep. So that's an interesting look at that. Skip over that. Let's move on, Jacob. Unless there's something else that you want to talk about the trades, I thought we'd move on to a little while. We're not going to go super into depth over wildcard weekend because obviously we're recording this Thursday night, a lot of the games. But as we talk about the teams we'll pick, if there's something that you want to talk about in the game, let me know. I'm going to put up our picks on the screen. So just give me a second and I'll get that up. And then you can talk about how bad my picks were.
I mean, it's par for the course at this point, right? I mean,
It is. You know what? I'm going to let our listeners know that Jacob and I, outside of what we do here, we have a pool that we do each week. No money. It's just, us and our kids, and we make up picks. I had the best regular season record. I just want to let you know that I beat you in the regular season by a pretty sizable amount, like 6 or 7 games.
You kind of came back towards the end when you started making ridiculous picks that came true. That was one of those things where you kind of rolled the dice, like, I'm going to have to pick this team because I don't think anybody else is.
No.
And then the Panthers beat the Rams and stuff like that.
No, I was winning all season. I was tied with you or neck and neck with you. And then my picks came true. So let's talk. I just want to say that there's a lot of red on this screen, but I will tell you that I was winning. All these teams were winning with like 2 minutes left in every one of these games. So it was very close. So that's my saving grace on this. Yeah. Anyways, first game that was played was Rams Panthers. I picked the Panthers. You had picked the Rams. God, that would have been sweet if the Panthers
I know,
would have won.
And they showed some fight, man.
I did.
I was pulling for the Panthers too. I picked the Rams, but I was pulling for the Panthers.
I did something that I don't know if I'm exactly proud of, Jacob, but this is actually the first this game was the first bet I made with my son. Like, I think the first money bet I've ever made with my son. It was for $1, and it was with 2 minutes and change left. Whenever the Rams got the ball, I bet him that Stafford was going to throw a pick. No. And I was like, he's going to throw a pick on this last drive. Because I was like, this is totally Stafford. It's going to happen. Did not happen. Colby Parkins had made an amazing catch on an amazing throw for a touchdown. So exact opposite happened. But I thought Stafford was for sure going to make a pick. It was only $1. So my son won that. That was his first bet that we ever had together for money, and he won. So
it did feel like that. That's funny that you said that because I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, man, what if they pick it off here and it's over? Like,
yeah, I've seen enough Stafford games to know that that could happen, but didn't happen. Rams won that game. Packers Bears. The Bears did it again. Do you think these teams would know? And LaFleur just totally screwed up that fourth quarter play calling, just massively screwed up. Make them use their timeouts, make them do things on a 3rd and 15 in your passing. And it's like, man, it just run the ball, make them use their timeouts. It just blew my mind.
It's like, you said it before, things happen. It's like the perfect storm of things happen for the Bears to be able to come back and do this. And, obviously one of the teams had to win. Didn't want either of them to win. But you know what? It's always a good time when the Packers lose. And for them to be so confident and their fans to be so confident and online and stuff, right after the first quarter, basically, So it was great to see them crash and burn.
Yep.
What did you think of Ben Johnson's post game? First, like the handshake. So the handshake with him and LaFleur, that was kind of like funny or whatever. But then the comments afterward that I'm sure are going to be a huge storyline based on how the season goes next year and every matchup that they have. What did you think about that? Were you surprised?
Yeah, both counts. Like, maybe not the handshake so much. Well, I get that you're excited about it, but he shouldn't have been screaming like in excitement. In my opinion, going up, you got to be more professional in that, right? I mean, he doesn't like LaFleur. It's very obvious. Like he doesn't like LaFleur, and I think that was born in Detroit. And no one in Chicago likes the Packers. I mean, they're obviously dreaded, uh, rivals. But I don't. I think I would have liked a little more like professionalism. I don't, you know, you wouldn't be doing that to Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell just knock you out, right? He'd be just like, no, that ain't gonna fly. I'm gonna suplex you. You're done for. So the handshake was one thing that was disrespectful to screaming. I don't care about how quick it is. That's fine. Like whatever. I don't like that he's screaming all the way up to LaFleur. I didn't like that. That's saying F the Packers. I hate I hate them, or F them, or whatever he said at the end. That's wild to me. Wild.
That's like Sirianni level.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody likes him. I don't think that he's doing himself any favors out there. Obviously, Packers fans hate him anyway. They didn't like him when he was with the Lions, and then even in the pros or his press conference when he was announced as the Bears head coach, he was taking digs at the Packers right away.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they hate him. So that adds, rubs some salt in the wound, I guess, to lose like that to him and then have to hear him say that in the locker room. Yeah, I was very surprised. And I can't say that I care for that. I'm okay. Like you kind of said, like, he wouldn't do it if he was Dan Campbell. And I also don't think that Dan Campbell would act like that. Dan Campbell gets about as fired up as anybody, but not quite to that level.
Not at the expense of your opponent, though. He shows the opponent so much respect.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. Like, yeah, and that's the way it should be, in my opinion. Like he'll show the opponent respect, and who knows what he does, whatever he does in private, whatever he says to his players, that's not bulletin board material. But I just don't think it's a good look to just say that about another. I just don't. It's weird to me. Whatever. But if Dan Campbell did that, maybe I'd be like, yeah, I love it. I hate the Packers. I'm sure I'd be talking out of my mouth, but it does leave a little bit of bad taste in my mouth, especially since it's your first season. You got a long go around, and it's not like they came in there and wiped the floor with them. They came back. I mean, and probably the adrenaline's going crazy because, he had thought going to that fourth quarter, there's no way we're coming back. But LaFleur really screwed up that fourth quarter. And, things happened, as we say. It's the title of the Bears season. Things happen. All right. Next game, Bills, Texans, or Bills, Jaguars. Jaguars looked like they were going to win this game, and the Bills came back. We both picked Jags. We was wondering what it was going to mean for the Bills, like especially the coach. Would the coach get canned if he'd have lost that game, lost in the first round? Because we talked last week, like this is the Bills' chance. Mahomes isn't there. Can they do it?
I mean, Trevor Lawrence threw that interception there at the end, or that could have been it. I mean, they could have drove and down and won that game. So
I know
that was close.
All right, this marked the second bet that Preston liked the first bet so much that he proposed a bet before this game started, and this game involved the kicker, Cam Little. He said Cam Little's going to hit. He goes, Dad, I'll bet $1 that Cam Little hits one from 60 yards or further.
Wow.
And I said, okay. I said, but what if one's not attempted? And he's like, no, he's got to make one from 60. I'm like, no, I want to clarify. If he doesn't attempt one, is the bet still valid? He's like, yes. And I was like, okay. Because I didn't want him to say, well, he didn't even attempt it. Like,
right. You're not giving him any possible out.
And this was before the game. So like every time that they were getting in close in that range where it was 60, he was hoping a drive would stall. He was hoping at the end of the half something would happen. It was funny, but then we broke even because Cam Little did not hit a 60+ yarder in that game.
Right. And he missed one.
Yeah.
It wasn't 60+, but
no. So that was, again, the first 3 games were just like fun all the way through, right? I mean, they were a lot of fun. Then 49ers Eagles. We both picked the Eagles. They lost. The 49ers won this game. How they're doing this with their injuries is crazy. The impact players, Bosa, Warner, both being hurt. Salah's getting, head coach. He interviewed for the Dolphins today, so he's getting head coaching opportunities based on how he's coaching these games. Now, what do you think of this game, Eagle?
I picked the 49ers in the Yahoo Pick'em League. That's why we were different, because I know you said like, man, you might not even get one right.
Yeah.
Because I had picked the 49ers, but honestly, I think the 49ers have better coaches. And I just think the Eagles, even though they got the talented players, the Eagles all year long have not meshed. And then you got Sirianni and A.J. Brown getting into it on the sideline. It's the kind of stuff that happens to them all the time. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts threw for like 150 yards or something like that. It just wasn't. And even though it wasn't a great game for the Eagles, it was still, neck and neck right in there. And then the 49ers had to go down and score a touchdown to win the game.
Yeah. It was the most room that I'd seen Barkley have, like in any of the, I haven't watched like all the Eagles games, but for the most part, whenever Barkley was hardly having any running room, and he actually started breaking some out, and he was being productive in that game. It was one of the better games that I've seen him have all year. Chargers, Patriots. Patriots won this game. Vrabel's what he's doing with New England is, I know that they had like an easier schedule, and even the Chargers is probably one of the better pulls to have in the first round, especially Chargers having to go all the way over to Gillette Stadium. I'm not ready for the Patriots to be winning games in the playoffs. They need another decade of crappiness.
They haven't been down in the dumps long enough.
No, they have not. We'll see. They'll have a first place schedule next year. We'll see how that goes. We had both picked Patriots. And then Texans, Steelers, which might have been close for a little bit, but that Texans defense is insane and just made Aaron Rodgers look as bad as I want him to look. And how much happiness does it bring to you that Aaron Rodgers' last pass in the NFL may be a pick six if he doesn't come back next year?
Hey, his last throw as a Packer was a interception to Kirby Joseph, right? Yep. And now here you go. Last throw was a pick six. Awesome. Couldn't have happened to a worse person. So, it's funny though, because when we talked about this one, I was like, I don't think it's going to be close. Like, I think the Texans are going to win by at least 10. And then as the first half's going on, or even like all the way through the third quarter, the Texans just kept shooting themselves in the foot and making mistake after mistake on offense.
C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, the Steelers, like, is Aaron Rodgers are they going to keep it close enough that he's really going to win the game towards the end? And I have to hear that. And then, the fourth quarter, they just blew it wide open. But it's funny because like what we do, so me, Milo, and JJ do like a fantasy draft just for almost like how DraftKings, like you pick somebody, not like, I guess not like with money, but it's just a fantasy draft, just the players that are in the playoffs. And it's, snake drafts and everything. And my team was winning. I was, it's just us all against each other. My team was winning. I was doing really good. I think Milo had Nico Collins, but he needed him to get like 40 fantasy points. JJ had Fairbairn for the Texans, and he had the Texans defense. And he needed like 30 points to catch me or whatever. And then the Texans defense just like 2 touchdowns there at the end. I think they had 29 fantasy points. The kicker had enough. He came back and beat me. So,
yeah, that was, you don't see defenses dominating the way the Texans have, and you can go back and be like, oh, the Ravens defense or whatever. Football was way different 20 years ago when that Ravens defense was so dominant. Like, you can't play the way, and even then it was 20 years, it was different, 20 years when the Bears the 85 Bears had a dominant defense. You don't you rarely see a defense control the game as much as the Texans defense does. And you're right, that should have been even more of a blowout, but CJ Stroud kept screwing up, and like CJ Stroud had a terrible game that game. Fumbles, interceptions, just bad. So, all right, let's move to the divisional round here. The first game, Buffalo at the Broncos. Who are you picking in this game, Jacob?
This one's tough for me, but I'm going to say that the Bills actually win this one. I think they come in with a little bit of momentum. The Broncos are a really good team, and the Broncos could do it. I don't know when you talk about Bo Nix versus Josh Allen, though. Josh Allen, obviously the better quarterback. I just feel like maybe the Broncos are going to be the team that kind of gets stung by having that first round bye.
This is a tough one because, man, Sean Payton, I think is. I kept asking you, like, why aren't the Jaguars running more against the Bills? They were just like running all over them, and then they get in the red zone and they just stop running. I'm wondering if I don't think Sean Payton is going to do that, and if he shows that he's going to be able to run on the Bills the way the Jaguars did, I think the Broncos are going to have enough to win this game. I'm going to pick the Bills just because I like you with Josh Allen is good, but I would not be surprised if the Broncos just it goes the other way and the Broncos, when it kind of depends on the, turnovers or a quick change or something like that. But if I trust Sean Payton to like not go away from the run game. I don't know what Cohen was doing. I would have been just running down Bill's throat until they stopped it. Just didn't happen. But I'm going to go with Buffalo on this one. The next one would be San Francisco at Seattle. San Francisco's run stops here. Seattle's just too good, and I think Seattle's going to win this game. Plus, being in Seattle, it's going to be a big home field advantage, and I just think Seattle's defense is too good. And George Kittle going out, that's going to hurt them.
I agree. It's also the same kind of like, they had the bye. Are they going to come out rusty at all? Sam Darnold going to be feeling the pressure, and he's not going to be able to move the ball if they, not to bring up the past, but like with the Lions, if you start turning the ball over and it's the perfect storm of things aren't going the right way and all of a sudden the other team's moving the ball on you, I just think the Seahawks defense is too good. Even if the offense doesn't have their best day, I think the defense holds them in there. Yeah, I've got the Seahawks covering the spread too.
All right. Texans, Patriots. Defense will be on display in this game. Will the Texas defense be able to take Drake May down? Second team All-Pro quarterback. Who do you got in this one, Jacob?
This is a tough one to pick because I really like the Texans defense. The Texans defense is good. From what I saw in that last game, though, like, with the offense, Stroud not being able to move, I think, did they already rule Nico Collins out?
I don't know if they have or not. I mean, he had, I think he went out with a concussion, right? So it's hard to come back in a week. They do get all the way till Sunday. So, they don't have to worry about it on Saturday. But yeah, it's probably unlikely.
I think it's a long shot that he plays, and that's a huge loss for them. I think that kind of takes a huge element of the offense out. I think the Patriots are going to be able to take it to him here.
All right. I'm going with the Texans in this one. They maybe get a pick six, maybe get a fumble return for a touchdown. I think the defense is.
So for the Texans to win, what kind of score are you looking at? So I'm assuming that you think if the Texans are getting it done, it's a close game. It's a low score.
It is a close game. I would say 21, like 14, 21, 17, something like that. I think Texans. I mean, I think it's going to be, who knows? I mean, if CJ Stroud just doesn't turn the ball over, he might be good enough. You know what I mean? It just might be good enough. He's going to have to make some plays, but you're right. Nico Collins being out is huge, but Christian Kirk had, as I said, attributed him to the wrong team, but Christian Kirk had a pretty good game last game. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right. Last game, Rams, Bears. I'm going with the Rams. Again, I want both of these teams to lose. So I'm really upset that they're having to play each other, but I do not want the Bears to go to win another game. So I'm going with the Rams in this one. But it is in Chicago, and, we'll see how it goes. But I think the Rams defense is pretty good. Way better than the Bears defense is. And I don't think the Bears. I think Stafford carves the Bears up.
Man, I hope the Rams beat the Bears by like 20. I hope they beat them so bad it's just embarrassing. They have to come back down to earth.
You got to watch the whole game through though, because you don't know. They could be up by 15 going into the fourth quarter, and you got to pay attention there. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I haven't looked at that. The weather could impact some of this. But even that, I think the Rams will be able to run the ball on the Bears. And I think the Rams defense is going to be just too much for Caleb Williams.
Says 10 degrees around kickoff time is what it's expected to be. Wind chill probably right around 0.
Ooh.
I don't know for those California kids. Might be something that keeps them in, but
Stafford knows he's Detroit. He's been in Chicago, played plenty of times, so he's
right.
he's ready for that. Let's see if Puka Nacua holds on to the ball, and he's done all year. I mean, it is crazy. You know what's going to Puka, and you can't stop it. He said it's like the year with Cooper Kupp, where the Super Bowl year, they just knew they were going to Cooper Kupp, and no one could stop it. It's unbelievable,
right? Every receiver, some of the best receiving seasons in history, and Stafford's a quarterback for Calvin Johnson, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp.
Yes, exactly. Yep. That's why Stafford is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It's going to happen at this point. It's crazy. So, all right, man. We'll see how it all lines up. I'm looking forward to hopefully. I mean, if these games could live up to what Wild Card Weekend was, man, we're in for a treat this weekend. We'll see, and it's going to could set up some interesting matchups for the following week. The Rams Seahawks divisional matchup, third time in the year that could happen. You got Texans Bills if that happens, even Denver. Denver and the Patriots. Oh my God, just so many possibilities. We'll see.
I don't, but it sucks because, man, I don't want hardly any of these teams. It would be cool for the Bills. It's cool for the Bills fans. It'd be cool for Josh Allen and everything if the Bills were to win the Super Bowl. But I look at these other teams. I don't want the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. The Seahawks just had that dynasty run and everything, and they've got Sam Darnold. Even though I like the coach and everything from Seattle, the Broncos also relatively recently have had some sort of success. I definitely don't want the Bears even in the NFC Championship game. I don't want the Rams either. One of them's got to go there. I'd be okay with the Texans, but I think that they're probably the longest shot on here. And like you already said about the Patriots, like they've had too much success recently.
Yeah. I guess I'm with you, Buffalo, and in NFC. If I have to pick, I'm picking the Seahawks. That's the team I'd want to make it out of there.
And I think that would be a good game. I think it would be a good game too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to root for one.
All right, Jacob. Let's wrap up here. Anything before we go?
Nope. I'm ready.
All right, man. We'll not tell Jeremy Reisman or the POD guys about any of our topics, so they, don't write articles.
Keep our secrets.
That's right. That's right, jerks. Now I could read that article. We'll see it. It says it was a comprehensive look, he said. So I'm curious how in depth he went, but we'll check it out. So, and you should check it out too. If you haven't read the article, watch this podcast and you read it and compare it for the two of us. But that is Jacob, my good buddy. I'm Jason. Let's go Lions.